Commission. Is there anyone in the audience or on the line who has business before this commission that is not on the agenda?
Any business that's...
Do you want to, we're not on the agenda, do you want to make your announcement? They just called it to order and they asked if we had anything that wasn't on the agenda that we'd like to speak about.
Oh,
Public comment period.
no, I don't think so.
But we wanted to announce the trout pond.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
If you want to,
I'm
you have
sorry,
to have a seat at the microphone and then identify
Do you wanna
yourself.
announce it?
No, you go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead. I'm sorry, I just came.
I'm sorry, Brad. Hi, it's Mary Wagon. I'm a resident, and I just wanted to let everybody know that the Board of Selectmen, on Monday, the 27th, they're going to be hosting a presentation about Trout Pond. It's a professor from Brown University that did a lot of studying on the bats in Trout Pond, and we think it's going to be very interesting. Mashpee TV is going to be doing an interview with our local Mashpee Enterprise reporter, Ryan Spencer. I don't think that will be live. I think that will be live, that will be streamed later. But just a heads up, I don't have the, agenda for the Board of Selectmen yet available, but once I do, maybe I'll send it to Drew and he can forward it to everybody. And that was it. Thank you.
What's the meeting date again, please?
It's Monday, the 27th. The meetings usually start at 6:30, but, you don't know what the order of the agenda is until the agenda comes out on Friday.
Understood. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other public comment on any agenda items, or non-agenda items? Yeah, that's all there was, Chad?
Thank you, Drew. You could proceed with the pre and post agenda item.
Sure. So we have the approval of the meeting minutes, which just want to make sure everybody received those from, this is the August 26th meeting minutes. And we do have a quorum present to vote on those meeting minutes. That will be Paul, Chad, and Alex.
Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move that we accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. Voting. Paul?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Time.
Okay. Do we want to move into the first hearing? Cover the other agenda
Very well.
items? Okay.
Now calling the 6 o'clock hearing for the Town of Mashpee Conservation Department, 217 Hoople Road. Proposed treatment of an eradication of an invasive aquatic species, variable leafed milfoil in Johns Pond. This is an NOI.
Okay, thank you. For the record, my name is Drew McManus. I'm the conservation agent for the town of Mashpee. And this application is the notice of intent that we submitted for the commission's review. This is a situation that was discovered by a few homeowners on Johns Pond that observed the infestation of what's called variable leafed milfoil, which is a pretty well-known invasive on inland water bodies. And it was discovered, and the Conservation Department was alerted to its presence, as I said, from one of the abutting homeowners, Jack Mates, was the first to let us know, and then we received subsequent communication from various abutters around the pond about the presence of milfoil. So what we did was, I went out with Mr. Mates in his boat. He was kind enough to show me around the infestation area, and subsequently we used GPS to mark out the area so we can get an idea of what the scope is. And we did that again also with the Department of Natural Resources, just so we were able to, cover this area and check around and make sure we got the full scope. And that's not to say that milfoil may not exist outside of this area, because it can spread pretty easily. But this seems to be where it's most concentrated based on our observations and feedback from users of the pond and abutting homeowners. So this was the area of focus. As you can see here in the image, the red circle pretty much encompasses the area where milfoil is most concentrated based on our observations. So you've got here in this cove area in the southern area of the pond, and then the lagoon and channel that connects the lagoon to the pond. So all along this channel here, and in spots in the lagoon as well. And the biggest concentration is out here in this cove of milfoil. So just to show you, these are the GPS points that were taken by DNR and subsequently given to Joe Onorato, who is the owner of a consulting company, Water and Wetlands. And he'll be available to answer any questions the commission may have about what we have in mind for treatment of milfoil. But I just wanted to give you the background of how it was discovered, how it was mapped, and then I can have Joe answer any questions as far as how it's going to go about proposed to be treated. So as I had said before, these are the GPS points, and then Joe created this kind of GPS map here showing what the extent, roughly is. But like I said, it could spread to other areas of the pond, and we will have that investigated as part of this project, this proposed project. It does require the application of a chemical herbicidal treatment called Procelicor. And Procelicor is a type of herbicide that is very target specific and very effective, found to be very effective in eradicating variable leaf milfoil. If this type of invasive isn't brought under control, it has the capacity to literally take over a water body, outcompete native species, and as a result, have an adverse impact on aquatic habitat and ultimately water quality. So it is something you really want to get ahead of and deal with very quickly as you can, once it's discovered. And I'm going to read this area, as the commission may be aware. John's Pond is mapped by Massachusetts Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program as rare species habitat. And the reason the species of concern is actually 3 different species of freshwater mussel that exist in the pond. So Natural Heritage was informed of the project and all the protocols involved when you're dealing with rare species habitat with this type of project. The type of notice of intent, the type of application we filled out, this type of project is known as a limited ecological restoration project, which means it fits specific criterion under the Wetlands Protection Act. And you have to meet this criterion in order for it to qualify for, if a project is approved, for a restoration order of conditions. So we went through the process of filling out the notice of intent. It has subsequently been issued a DEP file number and also a letter from Natural Heritage with specific conditions in order to avoid a take of those rare mussel species. So I'm going to just briefly go over what Natural Heritage has for their conditions, which if you approve this project will be part of the order of conditions. Starting with management methods, Procelicor, the concentration of Procelicor shall not exceed 10 parts per billion in the pond at any time. Any hand pulling, which is known as an acronym DASH. And Joe, what does that acronym stand for?
Yeah, that stands for Diver Assisted Suction Harvesting.
Got it, thank you. So no protocols for DASH. They note that care should be taken to minimize turbidity due to the presence of state-listed mussels if DASH is one of the approaches above and beyond the application of Procelicor. The other condition is regarding authorization duration. The authorization from Natural Heritage signing off on this project and their conditions is valid for 5 years from the date of issuance. Work may be completed at any time during this 5-year period in compliance with the conditions herein. Thereafter, the applicant shall refile under the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act. Notice, monitoring, and reporting to accompany future MISA filing. A 5-year report must be submitted to the division upon submission for a subsequent review under MISA. The report shall describe all work conducted pursuant to this authorization and include maps, narrative to describe areas of treatment, methods of treatment, and date of such activities. And then lastly, notice Wetland Protection Act filings. This is kind of, so this is something we've already done, which is actually, read this here before the applicant shall contact the division for written response regarding impacts to resource area habitat of state-listed wildlife, which we have done already, and this letter is the result of that. So we've gone through that process. Kate, do you want to read the Shellfish Constable's comments on this?
Sure. I'm writing to comment on the NOI to use an herbicide, specifically Procelicor, to control the invasive milfoil in Johns Pond. After researching the specific herbicide to be used, I was able to find some scientific literature on the effects this herbicide has on freshwater mussels. For those who don't know, several of Mashpee's freshwater ponds, including Johns Pond, are home to the eastern pond mussel, which is classified by the state as a species of special concern. I wish to verify whether or not this specific herbicide would or would not have a negative impact on the species. During my research, I found two pertinent articles on this matter. The first was the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement for State of Washington Aquatic Plant and Algae Management, which stated that in controlled treatments, Procelicor is not known to bioaccumulate in either fish or shellfish tissues. The other was a peer-reviewed scientific study done to test the sensitivity of juvenile freshwater mussels to multiple forms of Procelicor. This study found that the herbicide formulations and compounds tested were not acutely toxic to juveniles of these two species of freshwater mussels, indicating minimal risk of short-term exposure from Procelicor applications in the environment for aquatic weed control. I'm always leery of proposed chemical treatments in the water in regard to shellfish populations, but based on these two pieces of literature and the lack of other available options as outlined in the proposal, that this is the best way to move forward and that the risk of doing nothing outweighs its potential benefits. In short, this project has my full support moving forward.
And just for the commission's edification and anyone watching it here live in the audience or on television, these are just some images of what variable leaf milfoil looks like. And it does reseed itself if it becomes, if it drifts off, it can easily reseed itself in other areas of the pond. So that's why this particular application will also involve, additional surveying of other areas of the pond above and beyond looking at the primary area of infestation. So this is basically, if you see this, washed up on the shoreline and other areas of the pond, it certainly warrants, additional surveying of those areas just to make sure that all areas of milfoil are identified and then subsequently treated for eradication. So I'll hand it over to the commission if any of the commissioners have any specific questions about Procelicor, the application. It's all in your project narrative, but Joe is here from Water and Wetlands, Joe Ornato, to answer any questions that the commission or the audience may have, but we'll start with commission feedback or any questions.
Thank you, Drew. Commissioners, questions?
I'd like to start. Is the application method, is that going to be a broadcast application, or is it going to be injected into the water?
Yep, so I think I heard that question. And again, my name is Joe Honorato with Water and Wetland. I've been working with Drew closely on this project. So, so we would be out there with a treatment boat with a subsurface calibrated pumping system. It's very, very, very little product, and that's one of the benefits to Procelicor. So over the course of 4 acres, we're literally using about 63 total ounces of product. Actually, scratch that. 63 per acre. So it equates to roughly 2 gallons over the 2.5 gallons over the course of 4 acres. So you kind of think to yourself, well, how do you spread just 2 gallons of product over such a large area, right? So the product is diluted with pond water in a 50-gallon tank. And then out of that 50-gallon tank, it's pumped into the water body and injected subsurface. We really want to get the product down where the milfoil is actively growing. And it is a systemic product, so it basically gets uptaken by the plant and then gets down into the roots and kills the plant, unlike some of the contact herbicide options, which really just burn the plant back and give it kind of a seasonal kill. So that's kind of the benefit to Procelicor is we can get multi-year control with very, very, very little product.
So there's no airborne mist of any type?
Nope. So certain treatments, Phragmites and things like that, you may see a foliar application, we would call it, but not with this type of application. It's injected.
Okay. Thank you.
Same question.
Other questions?
Chad, I don't know if anyone in the audience has questions, if you want to ask for, I don't see any other questions from the commissioners.
I think with you, is there anyone on the phone or in the audience who has any questions or comments on this hearing?
Can you identify, just come up to the microphone, identify yourself for the record.
Absolutely. Hi, Rob Garf from 9 Set Circle, so I'm on the pond. First of all, thank you for addressing this. I've seen this up in the Adirondacks, and it's really evasive, so thanks for getting ahead of it. Two questions. One is, you mentioned you'll be surveying the rest of the lake. Is like you'll really be doing a thorough, because we've seen it in other places besides where you've identified on the map.
Right, sure. Yeah, so, and communicating with Joe, we talked about, you know, what would be involved in an increased survey budget-wise. And so we have increased the budget based on his recommendation to include that additional, and Joe, correct me if I'm wrong here, but to conduct additional surveys around the pond just to make sure that other areas of milfoil infestation are documented.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of my timeline, I mean, I think, Drew, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're hoping to get the treatment off the ground this year.
Yes.
So in my eyes, right, let's say we get approved tonight. We have the 10-day appeal period. So we want to try and get that survey done right away within that 10-day appeal period. Really survey the lake using visual observation, a throw rake. Luckily, the clarity in Johns Pond is typically incredible. I think the Secchi depth averages like 18 feet, which is great. So you can see a lot. Use a throw rake to pull up plants, and the throw rake will really analyze what plants are in there. You know, specifically milfoil is kind of the focus, but obviously if we see any other invasives or anything like that, you know, that'll come into play, and then densities are surveyed. So then we pair that with a GPS, and we can generate a map. You know, in an ideal world, I hope we don't find any other milfoil in Johns Pond. You know, I hope it was caught early enough by that homeowner that recognized it in that lagoon and channel, and you see, you know, I don't know if, Drew, I don't know if you want to scroll back up to your maps just real quickly, but you kind of see, go down to the next one here, right there. The map on the right, you kind of see it's in this lagoon, it's creeping up the channel, and then at that northern end of that channel, you see that it's creeping up into the main water body. And so one of the reasons why milfoil is so, I guess, dangerous, if you will, or horrendous, or just a horrible species, right, is that, as Drew said, it spreads through fragmentation. So you get boats chopping it up, just the natural brittleness of it at the end of the season. The fragments will escape and reroute themselves. So, you know, I hope it was caught early enough that it stays right in that kind of confined area, and we don't find any. But we will be surveying. We have that 10-day appeal period, which gives us enough time to go out, survey, map it, and then communicate with the town, you know, if we did or didn't find it anywhere else, and kind of work through that.
Okay.
So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, I guess I just, in terms of when you say survey, is the entire several hundred acres of the pond, because I'm no expert from the research we've done and being on the lake a couple times a day for the last 3 months, we've seen what looks like that in other places beyond the lagoon. So I guess two questions. One is, you know, do you want any input on that to highlight where it might be, or are you doing it totally comprehensively? Or, and the second piece is, if you don't catch it all within the first application that you do it, does this, what you're applying for, apply for it to be addressed in perpetuity, or at least, you know, until it's gone for this cycle?
The goal is to eradicate it thoroughly, so by any means necessary. So if it means, you know, like I said, I had asked for additional funding to cover, you know, additional survey, additional treatment. So that is the end goal, and whatever we need to do to accomplish that will be done.
Awesome.
Yeah.
My next question is, and it's related but not specific to eradicating, which is, how are we going to mitigate this happening again? Where it's happening and where we see it is where people who fish and bring boats in from outside typically are. So there's, you know, some correlation there, and it feels like if we do this now and we don't get to the root cause, no pun intended, I don't know if that's a pun or not, but if we don't get to the root cause, this will continue to happen.
Sure. So, I mean, I think that, you know, public outreach and education is a huge component of that, having proper signage at the boat landings. As far as anything, you know, above and beyond that, and just, you know, education to because it probably is coming from, visitors to the pond.
Yep.
Folks who don't live around the pond, using their boats, don't wash their boats properly, and that's most likely how it found its way into the pond. As far as anything above and beyond, making sure that signage is clear and visible at all well, there's only one public boat landing at John's Pond. So making sure that signage is, easily visible, and, just obvious when,
Yep.
when boats are being launched. Above and beyond that, I think what would be, the next best measure is to have staff at the boat landings, but I can't really speak to that because there's no plan for that. It requires a budget for that, and it would really have to go before the Board of Selectmen, town manager, to figure all that out. But we would certainly, advocate for it now that, the precedent has been established that an infestation is there,
Right.
lends more, weight to further oversight and more precautions in any manner possible.
Yeah.
To make sure that this doesn't happen again. So, if there's a silver lining here, that's it. It's that increased awareness and doing whatever we can, to make that awareness as comprehensive as possible.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Maybe it's outside the purview again of this discussion, but I'd love to talk about how we actually approach that in terms of the mitigation. You mentioned staff, if there are any tools we can put so that the people who come with the boats actually have something to remove proactively the milfoil.
Yeah.
Again, to maybe follow some best practices that are done around that we've seen based on research and experience.
It is a state-run boat ramp, so
Okay.
there would have to be some, authorization from the state as far as if you're putting in new infrastructure there, like hoses and things like that.
Exactly, yeah.
So that would definitely involve state correspondence.
And is that led by citizens like me, or is this something that is driven toward, how
I
does
think,
that work?
having it start with concerned citizens is the best way to have it start, absolutely. Yeah,
That's good to know.
Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
No
And once again, I really appreciate you jumping on it.
yeah, absolutely.
Other questions from the public?
Hi, my name is Jack Mates. I've been on Johns Pond, 53 Hoop Hole Road. I've been on Johns Pond since 1956. And back in the day, they say today you have 18 feet of visibility. Back then, it was probably 25 or 30. But the pond has been very, very pristine over the years. And I just want to thank the Conservation Commission for jumping on this as fast as they did. And I encourage everyone to approve this eradication process that Drew is proposing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack, for all your efforts in making this known. Very much appreciated.
Other questions or comments from the public or from commissioners?
I just have one thing. Is there a private boat launch in James Circle?
There is.
Can we get, is there a homeowners association there?
There is. John's Pond Estates, I believe, is the,
Yeah, I wonder if we can contact them and see if they would be amenable to some signage at that ramp. And then I'm also thinking, if people boat here, there's a good chance they go to Mashpee, Wakeby, or other ponds. Just proactively getting some signage at kind of all the ramps. Just a thought.
no, it's a good idea.
Joe, are you aware of any other infestations on Cape of this species?
Yeah, it's all over the place. I'm not sure, nothing's jumping out to me off the top of my head, but yeah, we see pretty much 3 submerged invasive species that are kind of the most common, I would say, right? And those are variable milfoil, Eurasian milfoil, and famewort. So we kind of see those 3, but they are all over the place, everywhere. So yeah, they're definitely down the Cape. And I think that, I welcome and I really love the talks about, the launches and the signage and public education because, that's exactly it, right? Somebody has a little fragment on their kayak, right? They don't even you think about it with big boats, right. With bilge pumps and all these things, but you don't think about it with a little teeny kayak and, somebody probably dropped their kayak in that little lagoon and there you go, right? You've created this infestation. So, Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place, and I want to say, Drew, correct me if I'm wrong. I want to say maybe Dean's Pond in Mashpee had milfoil or fanwort in there.
I believe, yes. I don't know.
One of the two.
Yeah, I think it was fanwort at Dean's Pond, in addition to a host of other, like Phragmites and purple loosestrife, and so there's a variety of invasives that were present at Dean's Pond. But that association has been very proactive in trying to deal with that as well. But I believe it was fanwort that they had discovered on the pond as well, and that's been undergoing ongoing treatments with aquatic herbicides as well.
Other questions and comments?
I don't think so.
Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion. This is an NOI.
Would love to.
Any further discussion before we have a motion?
One moment, Chad. Brad's going to
Yep.
make a motion.
I apologize, I can't see everybody.
No worries.
I would move that we close an issue in regards to the need for remediation at 217 Hoop Hole Road in Mashpee.
Thank you, Brian. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll entertain a second.
I'll second it.
Is there?
Hold on.
Thank you very much.
One moment, Chad. I think Paul wanted to have some discussion.
Do we
All
also,
right.
we also want to include the Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program conditions to that motion?
Yes. So Brad, if you wouldn't mind just restating your motion for close an issue with conditions from Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program. This would be close an issue, an order of conditions for treatment of aquatic invasive milfoil on Johns Pond with conditions from Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program.
Okay, I would move that we close an issue in regards to the treatment of John's Pond, and that I'm sorry, I get my scribble.
Natural Heritage with conditions.
National
for Natural
Heritage
conditions.
condition. What else? I'm sorry, I just
I'll second that.
can't read my handwriting.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second.
Very good. No voting. Paul?
Yes.
Brad?
Yes.
Alex?
Yes.
Yes.
Brian?
Well, Brian is not present, but Charlie is present.
Oh, that's good. Charlie?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The second to exchange the paperwork?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Get an extra one.
Oh, thanks.
Everybody
go, Drew?
good?
Yep, everyone all set.
I think we're all set, Chad.
Okay, thank you very much. Now calling to order the 603 hearing for 36 Summersea LLC, 36 Summersea Road, proposed demolition and reconstruction of single-family home with associated landscaping and hardscaping modifications, septic system upgrade, and mitigation planting. Representative is Sweet Star Engineering. This is an NOI.
Hi, I'm Joe Anastas. I'm the owner of 36 Summersea. The Sweetser is not here, so I guess I'll be representing myself. I have here today a copy of the mitigation plan that was done by Michael Caradosi and have forwarded to Drew. Anyone would like to see that?
Should have it all. Do you all have the,
have a copy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paul, do you have a copy of the mitigation plan?
Yes.
It should be behind
It should
the,
be, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, do you have
Oh,
another?
wait a minute. Sorry. Split it in over here.
here you go.
You know,
Must have just missed that one.
do you have one, Alex?
I
You
do, yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Oh, very good, okay.
One of the things that Drew recommended was to switch up some of the shrubbery in there, and we've brought that to Michael's attention. Additionally, I have a site plan. I don't know if that is pertinent at this meeting. A site plan that has been updated by Sweetster. And additionally, there is a plot plan that shows the layout of the new construction, where it will be.
Joe, can you give some background for the commission's benefit, because this was continued, so do you want to refresh their memories on what the overall project is?
Yes, so I purchased this property in May, and for the purpose of knocking it down and building a new home. It's been sitting there in New Seabury for years, vacant. I don't know if they had a hard time trying to sell it. It's definitely a tear down. And I walked into the building and looked out the deck and saw a little peek of the water, and walked back out and said, I'll take it. And probably within the next 3 or 4 weeks, I got a buyer that's interested in me building them a custom home on the property. Have gone through that process and have signed a P&S, and am waiting to go to the next step.
Are the commissioners familiar with the original presentation from Sweetser Engineering as far as how this project relates to the Wetlands Protection Act? Or do you feel that needs to be gone over again?
I would just ask, has the enforcement order been issued?
Yes.
Has there been any work
So
to
it's
date on that?
literally just issued yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just go over some of the history of the project. So you can see this is the location of the property. It borders a pretty extensive salt marsh off of in between Summersea and Little Neck Lane in New Seabury. Your resource areas are Coastal Bank. Actually, sorry, this is a cut and paste. There is no riverfront here, but it's Coastal Bank, buffer zone to Coastal Bank, and buffer zone to salt marsh and land subject to coastal storm flowage. So please disregard the description down here for riverfront. That's not pertinent to this site. So here you have some photos of the site. Top photo here, looking at the property from the road. So you've got a lot of overgrown ornamental vegetation, as Joe had described. The property hasn't had much maintenance over the years, so it's a pretty overgrown, non-maintained state. Top right photo, looking from the front of the house back out in the driveway area. You've got some native trees here, and then mostly overgrown ornamentals fronting the home. Bottom left photo, just looking off to the side, these stakes are the proposed footprint. House corners, looking at the property from the road. This would be on the left-hand side. This is top left, looking at the back deck, and because they couldn't put in staking here to show the actual deck footprint, they just spray painted deck just to indicate where the footprint of the proposed deck is going. Then looking up on the deck out towards the backyard where this fence is pretty much the top of the coastal bank. That's where the start of the top of the slope is. And then you can see here from the bottom left photo, it's a fairly well vegetated, thickly vegetated coastal bank. And then looking at, this is underneath the deck on the opposite side, so right side looking at from the street, right side of the backside of the home, where there's an existing shed and some hardscaping retaining wall here. And you've got some other non-native tree species and vegetation coming into this area, this side of the home. So basically, the last time this was brought before the commission, we didn't have any, this plan here, which is the plan that you all were presented with in the beginning when this was first presented. And it showed some areas of mitigation which were identified, I believe, as creeping juniper in this area here, highlighted with the green symbols. But in the NOI narrative, there were other areas of mitigation that were described but weren't shown on the plan. And then as you can see from this plan here, it didn't show anything other than the house footprint and the septic. But no, and then indication of lawn areas, but we weren't sure what the percentage of lawn coverage was proposed, and it can't be more than 10%. So all of those missing details about the landscaping and hardscaping, all within this line here. This is the 100-foot buffer to the top of the coastal bank. So anything landward towards the road past this line is outside of wetlands jurisdiction. There's a slight part of the leach field that's within this line, but anything past this delineation is outside of jurisdiction. So from here all the way out towards the wetland is all within jurisdiction. So then this plan was created based on the feedback from the last meeting to make sure that the mitigation calculations were accurate as far as any new areas of home footprint within the 50-foot buffer zone to coastal banks. So they had to go by the mitigation calculation chart under our waiver requirements section, 172-7, section 3. So that chart was used to calculate out the required amount of mitigation, and then it was recommended by myself and the assistant agent that there be more variety of, as our regulation 12 mitigation requires a minimum of 3 different species when it comes to mitigation, and there was only one identified on the original plan. So that has since been rectified with the additional species that you see here. And just to go over, you've got northern bayberry, you've got huckleberry, and you've got bearberry and beach plum. So it's a good mix, all species that are highly suitable for this type of coastal area. And the square footage that they've proposed meets that the standards under that waiver request for required mitigation based on the proposed square footage of new structure within 50 feet of the bank. And you can see the species and numbers up here on the mitigation plan. So for all intents and purposes, the project as proposed meets the standards, the performance standards for coastal bank. And the standards and functions of this particular bank are that it's a vertical buffer for storm damage. So the coastal bank is a vegetated, non-eroding bank. It does not serve as a sediment source coastal bank because there are no, because it is non-eroding, and it does not contribute sediment to any other resource areas such as coastal beach and coastal dune. They're simply not present in this area. So that is the function of the bank, and no part of the proposal is impacting the bank or occurring on the bank. So it meets those performance standards. Bank is not going to be destabilized by any of these activities, and as long as proper erosion control is put in, there won't be any impact to the bank, and as long as that erosion control is maintained throughout the construction, demolition and construction, if the project is approved. So the last comment, and this is what Paul had inquired about previously, this it was discovered when Caitlin and myself had gone out to the property on a couple of occasions just to get the lay of the land in preparation for the original hearing. And we observed some tree removal on the bank. Started out with observation of a few trees, 2 to 3 trees, and then in subsequent site visits, it ended up being a total of 9 trees cut on the coastal bank itself. This resulted in the issuance of an enforcement order. 8 of those 9 trees were mature-sized trees. So when you talk about the level of violation that this presented, it's significant. Anytime you denude, cut, remove, alter vegetation directly in a resource area, it's a serious violation. Property owner has informed us that he was unaware of any of the activities that took place. We're only left to conclude that this was done by a previous property owner. However, based on the condition of the stumps, the condition of the trees, because they're all left currently on the bank, they were just cut and left. This work took place within the last few months and no longer than a year at most. And that's based on our experience of observing cut trees previous violations. So we feel confident that this cutting was relatively recent. We don't have any evidence to point to who actually did the cutting, but as the current owner of the property, Joe is responsible for this situation. So as such, we issued an enforcement order yesterday. I sent out the details to the homeowner. And it's my recommendation that if the commission were to approve this project, and bear in mind it does meet the performance standards with this situation of a violation, that your approval be conditioned to require what I would word as substantial compliance with the enforcement order in order for any commencement of work to proceed. And that includes demolition of the existing home and construction of a new home. So as far as what does that mean, substantial compliance, I would put at a minimum that a mitigation plan be presented and approved by the commission. I understand that the homeowner, the property owner, is under a deadline to get this work done. He's in a purchase and sale agreement, and he can provide more information on that. But this violation needs to be dealt with sooner than later. And I wouldn't recommend that the commission allow any work to proceed until compliance measures have started. And that would be my minimum recommendation, is that a plan be created and approved. And all efforts should be made to not only have that plan in place by this growing season, but have the plantings in place by this growing season if that's feasible. And the homeowner has engaged with a wetland consultant, Sebacia, Bob Gray, who has a very good reputation, very knowledgeable wetland consultant. And so he has engaged with that service already, and hopefully we can move forward with the enforcement action as soon as possible. The first step, obviously, is to remove the trees that were cut on the bank as soon as possible. No heavy machinery, has to be done by hand. Obviously, chainsaw use is fine, but you can't use heavy machinery on such a steep coastal bank. And the enforcement order essentially lays out a series of requirements. The hiring of a wetland consultant, meeting with the consultant, the property owner on site to assess the situation and come up with the best measures to mitigate for what has happened. So whether that means trees planted, shrubs planted, a combination of the two, all of that will be hashed out with the consultant based on the existing site conditions. It is a very steep coastal bank, so tree planting in areas where trees were removed may be more disturbance, create more disturbance than it's worth. But that's the whole purpose of the site visit, is to go over the existing conditions, what has taken place, and what is most suitable to enhance the lost biomass, replace the lost biomass from the tree cutting. So all of that will be hashed out. I can't really answer any questions on that at this point in time, but that is the goal, is to recapitulate that lost biomass. So, and my recommendation is to close an issue on the project with that condition that no commencement of work is to take place until a final mitigation plan is approved.
May I make a statement?
Thank you, Drew. Questions and comments from the commission?
The applicant has a question.
May I make a statement? So I think that the clearing of those trees was, disgusting. I didn't do it. I've been working in New Seabury since 2003 when I got my construction supervisor's license. I'm here today by myself. I don't have legal representation because I don't feel I need it. I feel that I've always been upfront, honest, and forthright with this town. I've always been proactive with all the committees. I've already presented this to the ARC. I've never tried to do anything to hurt anyone, yet I find myself in this position. I purchased this property at the end of May. I went in front of the front door of this property, saw the view, which I had taken a picture from my iPhone on June 17th. I used this for the multiple listings sheet with Sotheby's Real Estate. I never went around the back. It was pretty dense. I knew that it would be a tear down and that it would require some issues being so close to that view in the water. And I was willing to go through the process. I sold the property. I got a buyer that wants me to build them a beautiful custom home, and I've recently signed a P&S, and the house needs to be completely done by December of '22. Conservation came out to the property. I met Drew there. I agree with what he had to say. I did not do the cuttings. I told him that I wasn't responsible, but as the owner of the property, even though it appears that the people possibly selling the house did the damage, I guess I am responsible. So I did a mitigation plan with Mike Caradosi, and then I went out and I hired Bob Gray, who's got a great reputation, to help me, and I was very fortunate that he is going to squeeze me in. He's actually leaving on vacation tomorrow for 2 weeks, but we have a tentative, if Drew is available, to go all out there and meet. I believe he's like the second week in October or the first week in October when he gets back. You know, I'm told that there's a 3-year monitoring program and that I can't do anything on the property until all the restoration is done. Honestly, don't see how that's fair. I understand it. I don't think the new owner should be saddled with a monitoring situation. I don't see why I can't proceed and do both at the same time. I get that the coastal bank is an important preservation of natural habitat, but if I can't go on this project, I'm going to take a serious financial hit, something that I didn't do. I am willing to pay the cost of the mitigation restoration, and I do believe that it's fair to be inspected at the conclusion of the project, but I ask that be allowed to continue with the project and monitor after the first year of completion of the project ends. I respectfully request that that be considered. Thank you.
Just to clarify, are you asking that no more monitoring be required after you're out of the picture?
I would say that it would not be fair to the new people that are going in there. As long as I meet all the requirements that I'm willing to work with you guys, at the end of the project, please do the inspection. I'll do whatever you'd like me to do and absorb the cost. To me, it's easier that way than to take the financial hit of missing the opportunity to build the house. So I'm willing to work with everybody. I'm just in a tough position.
Just wanted to make you aware too that typically the mitigation that's already proposed as just part of the house construction does come with a 3-year monitoring and maintenance as well. So
Okay.
I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Whatever that is, I guess. I'm not even quite sure what the extent of that is. Maybe you can explain.
Biannual monitoring by a certified landscape architect that issues reports of the conditions of the plants to us in the spring and the fall.
Oh, good.
And if there needs to be replacement done, it's done at that time. But that does, that will be part of the, if the project goes forward, that will be part of the permit.
So that would be Caradosi
Yes,
Landscape.
the
Yeah,
plan
so I would
created.
sign a 3-year contract with Michael to go do that. And
If you so choose, yes, with him.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I've done a lot of work with him. He's really good at, what he does. I respect his opinion, so.
So this, the mitigation that, is forthcoming for the violation could be lumped into that, to the mitigation that you proposed for the project. The reason that I recommend a 3-year, and sometimes it can vary, it could be 1, 2, 3 years, is based on the scope of the violation.
Mhm.
They have perfect understanding that, I know you said you didn't do it. I have no reason to disbelieve you.
Thank you.
But the fact is, my recommendation is really based on ensuring that not only these mitigation plantings are put in, based on, the scope of the violation, but they aren't just put in and neglected after 1 year.
No, I get it.
So when you're asking for 1 year, I don't recommend that. I don't endorse a 1 year monitoring and maintenance period. I endorse a 3 year monitoring and maintenance period. If that means you have to set up a situation in escrow with the people who are purchasing the house, however way that you figure out how that gets paid for, is really up to you. And if the commission, agrees with a 1 year based on what you're asking, that's fine, it's their decision. My recommendation is 3 years because of the scope of the violation that has taken place. I think it warrants extended monitoring and maintenance.
And Drew, that's why I went out and got Bob
Right.
Gray, because, he's one of the most respected guys, and like I said, I'm fortunate that I was able to secure his services. He is retiring in a year from now, which then I would have to try to find someone else to take his place after that. So that's another reason why I'm asking for the 1 year.
Doesn't have to be the same person who
Doesn't have
does
to be the
the,
same
yeah.
person.
It-
Okay.
It could be Cardosi.
This is all new to me, so.
Hypothetically, yeah.
And everything that we're going over as far as the requirement is written under Regulation 12 of Mashpee's Chapter 172 regulations. So if you
Okay.
want to read up on the more details, that's the reference for you, is Mitigation Regulation 12. Everything we're telling you about ongoing monitoring and maintenance, species diversity, how a plan should be created, the timing of all of that, and all the details is written into that regulation.
Okay.
If you want to take a look at it, if you have any questions on where this is coming from.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. So no other, my original, just to refresh the commissioners, my original recommendation was to close an issue on the project with a condition of, at a minimum, production of an approved mitigation plan prior to commencement of any activity on the lot.
Questions and comments from the commission?
What would be the length of time to get that type of a mitigation plan before us?
Paul, I honestly don't have the answer to that. I know that expressed the urgency to Bob Gray, and he told me that he would, him working with Mike Cardosi and getting out there with Drew would take the matter as an urgent matter and give me the priority of his time. So, based on when he comes back, I've never done this before, so I don't really know the answer to that question.
So the first week of October is the
Figure it
plan
out.
to
Yeah,
be
I
there
think-
on
I
site?
think what he said was, if you give me 1 second here.
Other questions and comments?
The applicant is just searching for some information based on a question from Paul.
I apologize.
Here we go. He said that I'm out of state till 10:10. I could meet with both
I
Mr.
apologize.
McManus, Mr. Cardosi, on October 12th to 13th, anytime as directed by the enforcement order of the narrative. So, either the 12th in the morning, anytime on the 12th, or afternoon on the 13th. Sure.
And when is our next meeting?
October 14th. Thursday.
When's the next meeting?
I was just asking when our next meeting was. I was trying to see if there's a window of time that we could see that mitigation plan before we issue an order of conditions. Personally, I'm not comfortable voting for an order of conditions unless I'm 100% sure that, number one, the mitigation plan is sufficient, and number two, the mitigation plan is in operation.
Well, I get that.
Yeah.
That's why I went out and hired the best people I could find to make sure that it was done properly. I don't want to have a bad reputation in this town. I've been here a long time doing a lot of work. So we'll correct the problem to, the maximum standard, whatever that might be, and hopefully I'll move on.
Other questions and comments from the commission?
I just have a question about the area to be vista pruned.
Oh, yes, thank you for
How
bringing that
wide
up.
is that?
Thanks for bringing that up. That was another one of the comments. So this application doesn't ask for vista pruning. There is no request for vista pruning in the original notice of intent narrative, so that is to be disregarded.
Okay.
It's not part of this application.
Let's deal with one thing at a time.
Vista pruning's already been done for all intents and purposes.
Right, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Well, actually, honestly, if you looked at this picture that I took on that day, and I went out there just for the heck of it today, and he took the same exact picture from the exact same spot. It's almost identical, but when you stretch it out, you can see the dead tree that had fallen down. So
Yeah.
it starts over here and goes this way. It's not where the actual view was,
Yeah.
so.
So these 9 trees are in that same area? That's, no. they're
No,
not.
they're scattered throughout the bank. They're on the left side, the right side, and down, there's one tree that was cut towards the, right around the toe of the bank. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell. I mean,
And I
it's-
do have, I have a landscaper prepared to go in there next Wednesday if you're available to come out.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, I won't be, but Caitlin may. I won't be here on Wednesday, but we can make arrangements for that, or at least as long as we know and what the protocols are, you know, that there's no heavy machinery
Yep.
to be brought in for that cleanup work. So,
Thank you.
thank you for getting on that quickly.
Yep.
So as I said, it was discussed at the last meeting, you know, the idea of coming at this with an enforcement order is to kind of separate out the project which in and of itself meets the performance standards for the resource areas, and then dealing with this violation through an enforcement order, which if not followed can be, you know, subject to fines or further enforcement actions. So that was my recommendation, just because, you know, with this requested information of the landscape details and mitigation details, which is what the commission required from the last continuance. And at that meeting, it was discussed that the best way moving forward was to separate this violation out through an enforcement order. So my recommendation is that it stays the same, that I would recommend that you close an issue. I don't foresee a risk of non-compliance. I have no reason to believe that the property owner, given what's happened and his knowledge of the enforcement order, having read it, you know, at the same time that we sent it out by certified mail, he understands the conditions. I have no reason to believe that he won't follow them. And we can certainly have the plan, you know, brought to you, you know, for review and approval. But I think that by putting in this condition that no work is to take place until that plan is presented is effectively the same type of result as if you were to continue this hearing in anticipation of seeing the plan. That's why I suggested the condition. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Other questions and comments from the commissioners?
Let me take a shot.
Anyone in the audience on the phone who would like to make commentary?
No public comment that we're aware of.
All right, unless there's further discussion, we'll entertain a motion. This is an NOI, and there has been a condition requested by the conservation agent.
I would move that we close an issue in regards to the application of, I guess it's in the name of Joe at this point. Who filed?
It's, yeah, 36 Summersea LLC.
36 Summersea Road in Mashpee, with the one condition that we get a mitigation plan delivered to the commission by the meeting on 10/14, prior to any work being begun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fee. There's no further discussion. I'll entertain a second.
Second.
Thank you, Charlie. Voting. Paul.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carried with the condition. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
go to?
We're almost there. Alex just had to leave the room for a moment. If we can give her a couple minutes.
Of course.
Thanks.
Doug is encouraging me to do the same.
Well, we're just waiting for one of the commissioners to come back into the room.
Yep. Katrina's on the line, by the way. And she emailed us a little after 6. She's going to be on.
She has.
Yeah. And I think she's in the notes, so that's why. But I did take some notes, just.
Pictures of this property that took place.
Okay, we are ready.
Very good. Thank you, Drew. Now calling the order the 606 hearing. Hans E. and Sarah J. Brings, 23B Place, proposed septic system upgrade. Representative of Cape and Islands Engineering, and this is Nadia.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the applicant and the homeowners of the property at 23 Jeep Place. This project has already gone through several town boards, in particular with Board of Appeals and with Board of Health. The project includes an addition to the house, which is a garage. And also, because of the garage being so close to the existing septic system, we're proposing to upgrade the existing septic system on the backyard. What we're proposing to do is to remove the existing leaching field and D-box and install a new leaching field with a new configuration to meet 5-foot setbacks to the proposed new garage. The existing property is mostly outside of conservation jurisdiction, except for a piece of triangle on the southeast corner of the property, which is what Drew is highlighting in the area. This 100-foot buffer, which is the jurisdiction line, derives from the coastal bank, 2 properties to the east. This is the only resource area that provides a 100-foot buffer that touches this property. The rest of the property is outside of jurisdiction. The proposed work is mostly intended outside of jurisdiction. There may be, because of the excavation of the leaching field, there may be some excavation that goes into that buffer, but the entire area is already developed with lawn areas, so it's not proposed to change from current development. So it's fairly a simple project in that practically no work is to be undertaken in the buffer zone. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Drew, comment?
So I'll just go over the just some of the images here. This is the property right here, 23 G Place. Let me get back to the. So you can see it's 2 lots back from the top of the coastal bank, which is right here, and this is the extent of velocity zone highlighted in red, and then you've got a little bit of elevation 13 flood zone AE in this area of the lot. And as you saw on the plan, I'll go back to the plan. You've got this, this is a 100-foot buffer to coastal bank. So as Raul described, most of the work is occurring outside of this buffer. And only a slight incursion may occur as a result of the leach field work into that 100-foot buffer. But here are the images of the lot. So it's an entirely pre-disturbed lot. This is in the Popponesset beach area. So you can see this is the image of the home, looking at it from Jeep Place, from the road, top left, top right, looking down the side of the yard. It's actually front facing towards the water this way. And then where you see the bottom left images, this is the staking for the septic leach field area, which extends into the shed here. The coastal bank is back over here. So it is outside of the work, but some of the excavation may actually get into the buffer. But as you can see, and going back to the plan, or to the image rather, this whole area is all entirely disturbed. Most areas in the Pompanesett Village area, this is typically what you see. There's a lot of pre-existing disturbed conditions, lawns, landscaping, things of that nature. So you're not talking about any naturally vegetated areas, no chance of any impact to the coastal bank as a result of the proposed activities, which is why it was submitted as an RDA, and there's no need to condition the project. And I'll read Board of Health comments for the record. Property is located within a Zone 2, restricted to 4 bedrooms with a conventional Title V system. Board of Health approved upgrade and relocation of septic to allow the addition of the proposed new garage. So I would recommend a negative determination and no further comments.
Questions, commentary from the commissioner? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience or on the phone who would like to speak to this hearing?
Nobody calling in, and nobody's recognized or requesting comments from the audience.
All right, in that case, unless there's further discussion, we'll entertain a motion. This is an RDA.
I would move for a negative determination in regards to the application of Hans E. and Sarah J. Briggs at 23 Jeep Place.
Thank you, Brad. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Charlie.
Yeah.
Voting, Paul.
Can I ask a question, or can we discuss? Sure.
I'm sorry, I can't hear that well. Is there a question on the, before we take the vote?
Paul has some discussion, has requested some discussion.
When the
Okay,
project
go,
is,
Paul. Sorry about that.
when this project is finished up, we should be looking at the mixture of grass seeds to see if it is compliant with our regulations?
Yes, although we only have very limited jurisdiction on the lot, as you can see from where the.
It'd just be in that one little corner.
We can't condition anything outside of that because it's
I
not
see.
within jurisdiction.
Okay.
But it is a good point, and it is something I had actually, and Raul, this is just for your client's edification, that obviously there's going to be a lot of lawn disturbance as a result of this project. The commission strongly recommends that any sort of replacement lawn seed type adhere to the town's current lawn standards, not only under Chapter 172, but under the nitrogen control bylaw. So if that's something that can be relayed to your clients, just in the interest of trying to reduce impacts to water quality on a cumulative basis throughout town, I think I'll speak for the commission that they highly recommend that be the case. It looks to me like the existing lawn is a very high maintenance, high percentage Kentucky bluegrass mix as its existing state. And I say this with the understanding the commission only has jurisdiction in a limited portion of the lot, but it is something that we wanted to relay to your clients.
Yeah, we can pass that information along to the client. And just in terms of area, we're talking about approximately 210 square feet in jurisdiction.
All right, is there any other discussion before we take the vote on the second by Charlie?
I didn't hear that.
Hearing none?
He asked if there's any further discussion before the commission takes a vote on the second of the motion by Charlie. I don't hear any other further discussion.
Nope.
Did you hear me, Chad? There's no further discussion.
Oh, okay, thank you. Voting, Paul.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna collect up the plans, disperse the new plans, Chad, I'll let you know when we're good to go.
Thank you.
Yes, we're good. Yep.
All set, Chad.
All right. Thank you, guys. Now calling to order the 6:09 hearing, Town of Mashpee Department of Public Works, 664 Great Neck Road South, proposed removal and reconstruction of a boat ramp. Representatives are Cape and Islands Engineering. This is an NOI.
Good evening. For the record again, I'm Raul Lizardi from Cape and Islands Engineering, representing the town of Mashpee, and in particular DPW on this project at 664 Great Neck Road South. This property has received a few orders of condition in the past couple of years for development and improvements on this property. Most recently, earlier this year, we had an order of condition to extend the float and install some shellfish propagation bins. This project is now, or this new notice of intent, is to reconstruct the existing licensed concrete boat ramp. The boat ramp has been in place for several decades now, and it's falling in a bit of disrepair. So we're proposing to remove the existing boat ramp and build a new poured-in-place concrete boat ramp in the same slope, in the same confines of the existing one. At the end of the existing boat ramp, we are proposing a scouring pad, and this scouring pad was actually approved under the last order of condition on this project. Because we will be working within the tidal range of this water body, which is Aquay Bay, we're proposing a cofferdam, and outside of the cofferdam, we're proposing a siltation boom. The other resources at or near this project are a coastal beach. There's a coastal bank because the slopes of the ramp and the driveway to the ramp define a coastal bank. There is land under the ocean, land containing shellfish, land subject to coastal storm flowage. But all the proposed work is within the existing development of the existing boat ramp. There is no proposed extension, either landward or seaward, other than what's already been approved. For this work and for the copper dam in particular to be installed, we're recommending for the existing float to be dislodged and moved up to the side. That way it allows room within the inside of the cofferdam for the contractor to operate and do the construction that's needed. And it also allows some area outside of the cofferdam and inside the siltation boom. So in that gap between the cofferdam and the siltation boom, for some of the dewatering that would take place to be able to discharge and filter before it goes out to the bay. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Sure. So, let me just get back to the presentation and show you the existing conditions. These photos were taken from the project narrative submitted by Cape and Islands Engineering. This is the existing boat ramp here. So as Raul described, it is in a state of disrepair, and is certainly in desperate need of replacement. So as far as the need for this project, I think it has been demonstrated. The existing boat ramp is to be upgraded with a new concrete ramp cast in place. Proposed replacement is in the same footprint as the existing ramp, no expansion. Project meets the performance standards for land under ocean, which is under 310 CMR 10.25 as a water-dependent project. Project narrative provides details on erosion control, dewatering protocols if necessary, and temporary removal of the existing float. Sorry, I had put pier ramp and float in my comments, but it's just the float that would be removed for construction. Would be replaced upon completion. Siltation curtains to be used throughout the duration of construction. Raul, did you receive any comments from Marine Fisheries on this?
No, as of right now, we have not. The only comment we received was a couple of days soon after we filed, where they acknowledged receipt of the application and that they were going to review it, but nothing after that.
Okay. My guess is that they would have most concerns regarding siltation control. But in the absence of a comment letter from Marine Fisheries, my recommendation is that if the commission were to close an issue on this project, that said conditions, if they truly apply to this project, would be incorporated into an order of conditions at that time.
And the harbor master and shellfish constable do not have any issue with the project going forward as well.
All right, questions, comments from the commissioners?
I have a question on the floats. Are those typically left in throughout the winter, or are they removed? If this project weren't taking place? They're left in.
Catherine, can you just identify yourself for the record? Thank you.
Catherine Loren, DPW Director. The floats are left in. If for some reason there was a significant storm that was forecast that was going to affect this location, then we would look
They're
at
actually just
them.
ruling on
But they are
something
left
for
in.
the town boat ramp, but we should be like any minute.
Even if there's significant ice buildup, they stay?
We have not had an issue with ice at this location.
Okay. Just curious.
Hey, Como?
Excuse me, if I could have the attention of anybody on the line, we can hear you in the background. If you're not part of this present hearing, can you please mute your phone? Thank you.
I have a question. What is the projected timeline for this work to happen?
So we actually are going to October town meeting for the funding for the project. But because there are time of year restrictions, similar to when we did the ramp replacement at Great River, we will be looking to award a contract for construction soon after town meeting, pending approval of the funding, so that work could start before, I think, the January 15th deadline.
Yes, time of year restrictions, that's what Marine Fisheries will be
Yeah.
commenting on, yes.
Yeah, that's what, I mean, we're anticipating those
That's what I would
restrictions.
anticipate, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back to you,
I didn't
John.
quite hear, was that as, there's still more business on that comment?
No, Catherine had answered the question about, from Alex about timeline for this project to commence, and Catherine provided the answer.
Okay, thank you. Further questions from the commission? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience or on the phone who would like to make commentary or ask a question?
Nobody in the audience, nobody on the phone with comments for this application.
If there's no more need for discussion, we'll entertain a motion.
I
This
would
was an
move that we
NOI.
close an issue in regards to the application of the town DPW for the work to be done.
Thank you, Brad. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Voting, Paul.
Should we include the Marine Fisheries report
Oh,
in that?
yes, Brad, if you wouldn't mind. We have to restate the motion, Chad, just give us a moment. Brad, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, for the marine fisheries.
Yeah, restating the motion to include Marine Fisheries comments and state the project address too.
What was this last one?
Yes.
what was that last word that you said? Marine fisheries.
Condition comments from Marine Fisheries. And the project addresses 664 Great Neck Road South.
Okay, 664. Okay, I would move that we close an issue in regard to the application by the town DPW at 664 Great Neck Road South, with the condition that we include the marine fisheries comments.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that again.
Thank you, Charlie. Voting, Paul,
Yes.
Paul voted yes.
thank you. Brad,
Yes?
Alex,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll collect up, disperse for the next application.
Slow, sorry. There we go.
All set, Chad.
All right. Now calling to order the 612 hearing for Leonardo and Maria Elsa Caruso, 43 Little Neck Lane. Proposed replacement of pier, ramp, and float. Representative, Cape and Islands Engineering. This is an NOI.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, Matt Costa, here tonight representing the applicant. Also on Zoom tonight are the applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Caruso. We're back before you with this notice of intent application. Pardon me, I've been battling allergies all week here. Might be coughing a bit. With this notice of intent application to rebuild this existing pier. Last time, at the last hearing, there were some questions, some concerns by the board. I requested to continue for the ability to supply some additional information and to hopefully work through some positive changes on the application. So tonight, I won't go through the entire application again. I just want to touch on a couple of key points. First off, the applicant is a family of 8. They have 6 children. So they have, I have submitted information in a letter dated yesterday that you should all have that has boat and both personal watercraft and the actual boats that would be docked on the pier. In that, it includes information on the personal watercrafts, which are kayaks and paddle boards, and the 2 boats, a sailboat with a retractable keel and a 17-foot whaler. With that information, I also included the drafts for those boats. The whaler's got a 12-inch draft, and the sailboat actually has about 3 inches or so with the keel up. And that's a common type of sailboat for these areas, to get out to deeper water and then drop the keel. So just wanted to be clear on what the boats were and that they are adequate for the depths that are here. We did revise the plan, and that was presented at our last hearing, that include what we call the mooring areas, or the areas where the boat will be docked on the most seaward float. So the whaler and the sailboat will be docked on the most seaward float areas, and those are called out as mooring areas. And then the personal watercrafts will be used and docked from the most landward float. This property is unique in its shape and its topography, and that has extremely steep coastal bank. The only way down the coastal bank is via a set of elevated stairs, and that is the only way to access the water. So that is the only way for them to get the kayaks into the water. So the need for the dock is been demonstrated in the letter through the personal watercraft and the boats that are there, that the need for safely accessing the water, both for the personal watercrafts and the boats is real. This is a use for their current needs. It's not based on any sort of future needs. This project is including rebuilding existing licensed dock and moving the mooring area or the areas where the docks, where the boats are being docked, into deeper water. So there's a environmental benefit here. So we're taking that boating activity and we're moving it into deeper water. Additionally, with this new design, we're incorporating some design improvements for protection of the resource area, and that's by way of float stops. So the current float does not have float stops. The new proposed design will have float stops to protect the substrate, the resource area known as land under the ocean, and this design is an environmental improvement. We have worked, Drew has worked with the Shellfish warden and discussed things with him on this project, and he's done some more research about shellfish mitigation, and he proposed a shellfish mitigation using a formula that was derived, that was based on the proposed pier. We agree with that formula that was used, and we asked that request by the Shellfish Warden be incorporated into this application, and that will result in a fee being paid for shellfish mitigation. We did look at the site, and because of the existing conditions on the site, there isn't an opportunity. There is not an opportunity to add any buffer plantings or increase the natural areas due to the existing legal conditions. You can see the deck is essentially right at the top of the coastal bank where you start the stairs. Interestingly enough, the GIS photo that Drew pulled up actually shows a series of kayaks. So you can see, and this is probably a couple years old, you can see the kayaks are hung along the dock. And the dock must be off season because the ramp and float are out of the water. As part of my letter, I did include some Google imagery or a Google image that showed how the dock is currently used in the water. And you can see the plethora of kayaks moored around the dock. So in summary, we believe that this project meets the performance standards, that it does result in a net environmental benefit by the new design, by relocating boats into deeper water, by adding the protections to the resource areas, and by making an improvement to water quality by way of the shellfish mitigation. Therefore, we respectfully request you issue an order of conditions, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Drew, comments?
So I'll just go over just some images of the existing structure. And it is important to point out that this is the entirety scope of the project is for the entire fixed pier, not just float expansion. Just so the commissioners are aware, it's not in regards to just that one element. It's the entire dock and pier that's proposed to be rebuilt. So you can see here this is an image taken from the top of the stairway access down to the fixed pier, leading down to the existing float. Another shot here on the right, looking at the existing float on up the existing ramp to the fixed pier and stairway up the coastal bank. So you can kind of see in this image that, as Matt had stated before, there really is no opportunity for upland mitigation. It's pre-existing non-conforming house that occupies a significant portion of the coastal bank and buffer zone thereof, with a small area behind the house, which has been already permitted for various landscaping and hardscaping projects back here. And then you've got a pretty narrow side yard here. So any opportunity for upland mitigation has really been thoroughly examined, and there's just no opportunity for it. So I'll get to my comments in regards to my recommendations for the project. And looking at all of the performance standards for the resource areas at play that exist on this lot, which is land under ocean, 310 CMR 10.25, land containing shellfish, Chapter 172, Regulation 6, and 310 CMR 10.34. When I say 310 CMR, I'm referring to the State Wetlands Protection Act. While this area is mapped by marine fisheries as shellfish habitat, the existing area of water body around the subject dock is comprised of mucky substrate, and as such is not viable shellfish habitat. This has been verified by the Shellfish Constable. Under Regulation 6, the Commission is encouraged to go by the Shellfish Constable's recommendations and observations of these resource areas, because marine fisheries has a lot of areas mapped as shellfish habitat that simply aren't viable because their maps haven't been updated, they're not aware of the existing conditions, and this is one of those examples. Shellfish Constable recommends this shellfish mitigation fee to offset the cumulative impacts of dock projects in the town of Mashpee. Situations like this are one of those examples that warrants that form of mitigation. Said fee to be used at the discretion of the Shellfish Constable in areas most suitable for shellfish propagation and any efforts related thereto. It is the opinion of the agent that this form of mitigation is most suitable in the interest of offsetting the cumulative impacts of docks and piers in the town of Mashpee. I will say that the shellfish agent, the Shellfish Constable, when I first brought about this recommendation early on, when this was first brought before the Commission, was under a misunderstanding that he had thought that shellfish mitigation was to be, the fee was to be relegated for uses in and around the subject property. That is not the case. It never has been the case. It's always at the discretion of the Shellfish Constable and his Shellfish Commission as to where those funds are to be used. He wasn't aware of that, since he has been informed of that, he has since recommended this type of mitigation. So that was really the reason why it wasn't originally recommended, because he was under that essentially misunderstanding of how the funds could be used. That has since been clarified. I do recommend to close an issue with the condition of the required shellfish mitigation fee as recommended by the Shellfish Constable. And that is based on the increase of piles, square footage, and float shading area. So the formula used is quite comprehensive based on and applied to each and every situation as far as any impact, assuming the area would be viable shellfish habitat, and then can be used in other areas to increase shellfish habitat and improve shellfish habitat where it's most viable. Additional conditions that I would recommend if the Commission were to approve this would be the requirement of composite grading on the fixed pier portion of span over the salt marsh, and restoration of any coastal bank areas that are abandoned or destabilized from the proposed relocation of fixed pier and the associated access stairway. No further comments.
Thank you, Drew. Commissioners, questions and comments?
I have a question. Maybe it's more of a comment than a question. The information that's been provided for the 17-foot whaler is a 12-inch draft according to online research?
That information has been provided by the applicant.
Well, that 12-inch draft is for a 17-foot Boston whaler. I own a 17-foot Boston whaler. That 12-inch draft is dry weight, no motor. Regulation 27 calls for you to provide the draft of the boat and the depth of the propulsion unit. Now, I seem to remember somewhere that it's a 115 horsepower engine. My engine's a 90, and my draft is 19 inches. So if you've got MLW soundings at 1.4, that boat won't fit unless you've got your trim all the way up.
Well, when boating in shallow water, as you know, sometimes you need to make some adjustments. This mean low water are based on an average low water. There might be some times that they need to keep the trim up until they get to deeper water. That's pretty common throughout this bay. I mean, they use the boat now in shallower water. So we're moving that into deeper water and adding float stops, which do measurably improve the situation, resulting in a net environmental benefit, which is what we try to achieve. So it is an improvement. It is the same boat that's being used.
I have a question, Matt. Is it typical, when I was looking at your other plans that you've also stamped, into a waterway, you typically have the property line going straight out along the route that the line is going. So on this one, the property line extends, it changes to basically fit this dock, which is not consistent with what I've seen for other plans that you've created. Can you explain that?
Sure, that's a good observation. First thing to note is that they're not property lines. Property lines in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts stop at mean low water. Everything below mean low water is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts land. The property lines projections that are shown, there's two different methods to do that. There's one method for along straight shorelines where it's often a straight line projection of the property line. When you do have curved shorelines, there's a apportionment that goes on, and it's called the colonial method. I can supply some information to you on that, but it has to do with each person's frontage, the angle along mean low water, and then you essentially bisect that angle, and that's how you come up with that line. So these lines are not property lines. They're projected property lines that DEP likes to see because they have a policy and where they try to keep docks 25 feet or more from these projected property lines for navigation purposes. It's a policy, it's not a requirement. When you can't meet that 25-foot offset, they often ask for a letter of no objection from abutters, which we would anticipate getting. However, not all abutters get along. Even when abutters don't get along, they do approve piers when there are no alternatives. So these property lines are based on the shape of the shoreline and the frontage for each property. These projected lines, not property lines, projected lines. Did I answer your question?
Kind of, although, I mean, looking at it, it still looks a little off. I mean, it looks like we would be, if we were to approve this, we would be approving a dock in front of the neighbor's property, and we don't have approval from the neighbor, as far as I know, correct?
Alex, if I could offer a comment.
Yeah.
That's Chapter 91 jurisdiction, and that Chapter 91, when they, if you were to approve this project and it goes up to the state level, they deal with riparian lines and separation of neighboring docks. It's not to dismiss your comment, it's not really the commission's purview when it comes to this type of issue. So for separation from neighboring docks, that is exclusively the purview of Chapter 91 to hash that out, as Matt had described. They send out letters to the abutters. The abutters have a chance to comment, to look at the exact same plan that you're looking at right now, and hash out any sort of discussions or issues at that level.
And have we gotten anything back or anything saying that, or is that after we would?
They don't operate until the local authority issues a permit. That you can't apply for a state license until you get a local permit first. That's the order of events.
So could we condition it based off of, well, it would have to have Chapter 91 approval.
It has to, it's a requirement under the state, yeah.
Okay.
Other questions and comments from the commissioners?
I do want to say one other thing, if there's no one else that wants to say something first. I don't know, it feels weird, I mean, I'm not just going off feelings, Chad, but to say that the way it's currently being used is not great for the resource area, so this is improving it. The homeowner isn't entitled to use it the way he's currently using it. There's an assumption there being made. I mean, if he wanted to reach a larger boat, he could get a mooring. That is absolutely an appropriate path. I mean, we are protecting the resource area, and the water depth just isn't here. So, I mean, it would be appropriate for the homeowner to use his dock, have a dinghy at it, and get out to a bigger boat. I mean, that's what a lot of people do when they have boats that don't fit on their docks.
If a boat were placed on this dock, Drew, and any of the Conservation Department staff or members of the commission were to observe grounding of any kind, they would be subject to an enforcement order, would they not?
Well, we do have a boilerplate condition that states that at no time, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, but shall alteration of land under ocean grounding as a result of vessels moored at this at a dock, in any similar application, it shall not result in prop dredging or alteration of land under ocean. Now, having said that, the feasibility of enforcing something like that, not only for this project, but for several projects that have been approved previously, in similar settings, where you've got reasonably shallow water. But if such a condition were to be witnessed or, observed, and you can note the, you can see the activity, you can see the scouring at a random site visit, yes, it would be subject to enforcement at that time based on that boilerplate condition. So there is that type of condition in orders that we issue for all docks and piers that states you cannot cause prop dredging as a result of vessels moored at a particular dock and pier.
So at a later date, if the homeowner or successive owners were to purchase a vessel that was unsuitable for that draft and damaging the seabed beneath it, we do, likely the harbor master would notice, but we do have recourse.
Yes, harbor master, shellfish constable, or conservation staff.
Thank you, Drew. Other questions from the commissioners? Hearing none. Is there any questions or comments from the audience or anyone on the phone?
Nobody on the phone, and I don't see any questions from the audience.
Right, if there's no further discussion, we'll entertain a motion. This is I've seen it enough times, I should have it by memory. NOI.
I'm just being stubborn, that's all. Let's see if anybody else wants to do it. This is fairly straightforward. I would move that we close an issue in regards to the application of the Carusos at 43 Little Neck Lane. This is an NOI, so it's a closing issue. No conditions that I heard.
Oh, there are conditions, sorry.
Oh, there are.
Incorporation of the shellfish.
Incorporation of shellfish mitigation fee.
Incorporation of the shellfish fees.
And requirement of composite grading over the fixed pier portion that
Okay.
spans Salt Marsh.
We have a composite on the
Fixed pier portion over
fixed
Salt
pier
Marsh.
portion of the,
Yeah. And any restoration of any areas that are disturbed on coastal bank as a result of the
and restoration
Turn on
of any damage done to the coastal bank.
Thank you, Brad. If there's no further discussion, do I hear a second?
I'm going to second that, Chad.
Thank you, Charlie. Voting. Paul?
No.
Is that an A or a nay?
That was a
No.
no.
Thank you. Brad? I'm having trouble hearing you guys.
He hasn't verbally expressed yet.
Well, that'd be a good reason. Sorry to interrupt you,
There's
Brad.
always, just to remind the commissioner, there's always opportunity for additional discussion if you wish prior to voting.
I would vote yes.
Thank you, Brad. Alex?
No.
Charlie?
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Feedback carries the motion.
Does.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, Matt.
We're dispersing the plans for the final hearing of the evening. All set, Chad.
Thank you very much. All right, now calling the 6:15 hearing for the Town of Mashpee, Department of Public Works. This is Red Brook Road, proposed drainage and road improvements. This is an RDA.
Thank you. For the record, Catherine Laurent, Director of Public Works. I'm here because we are going to be reconstructing Red Brook Road, and as part of that project, as we typically do, we take a look and make drainage improvements.
The microphone is really for recording on the television.
There are 4 areas along the road where we are within 100 feet of an existing wetland. And you have some GIS maps that were provided showing those specific locations. And I have them identified by the drainage system number, system number 10. We are proposing to replace existing drainage within the road surface. We've done an inspection, and just based on age of the system, it has failed. So we're proposing to replace with additional capacity as well. All work would be done within the existing paved surface of the road. Once the entire project is complete for drainage improvements, we would be milling and paving the road. No expansion in the width of the existing pavement. The next location is I'm calling system number 12. And similar, where we have existing drainage within the roadway that we are proposing to replace. At this location, in our investigation, we found that there is high groundwater. So we are proposing, instead of using our standard catch basins, we are proposing to use galleys instead, which are a shallower type of system. Again, all work would be done within the existing paved surface. And the next 2 locations are shown on the same map, System 14 and System 14 and a half. System 14 is, again, an existing location where we are replacing failed drainage infrastructure within the existing roadway. System 14 and a half is actually a new location where we're proposing to install drainage. Site observation found that there is a berm along the south side of the road, but in heavy storm events, we do get overflow on that berm, and you can see where the water has gone down to the vernal pool. So we are proposing in that location within the existing paved surface to install some drainage to eliminate that condition.
And the blue, Catherine, is the erosion control.
Correct.
Is that,
Thank you, Drew.
yeah,
Yes,
sure.
we would be installing in those locations the erosion control.
And what is the makeup of the erosion control that you have planned for that? Like what materials?
I guess we were going to do just silt sock, but if there's something else that you would prefer, we are amenable to.
Silt socks, you said?
Yes.
Yeah, that should be. So just to we'll go back to the chat with your permission, sorry. If you want to hear my comments.
Please.
Yes, please. Sorry, the mute button was on.
So this is just a snapshot of the section of Red Brook Road that has the wetlands associated with it. This is using DEP's wetland inventory overlay. So you can see here, these are freshwater areas of freshwater wetland along Red Brook Road, and you can probably see even better from the images that Catherine supplied here. You can kind of see these darker gray areas. Those are the wetlands present. Again, right here, you can see over here, and then going up, you can see this depression area. So these could very well function as vernal pool habitat, but they are indeed classified as freshwater wetlands. So comments, and I'll go back here just to show some additional photos. So these are some pictures. I don't know which ones line up with the actual labeling that Catherine provided on our plan, but you can see here, just to give you an indication of when Catherine says all work is within the road layout, these are the catch basins areas that are proposed to be replaced, and then there's one new one, as Catherine identified, where you've got a lot of overflow. I don't think I captured a picture of that, but I did observe the overflow conditions. You can see the scouring over the Cape Cod berm, so it is certainly something that needs to happen there, because if not, over time that wetland is going to fill in. So it certainly is there's a need there to address that issue. But just to give you an idea, these are the existing road drains, and so all work wouldn't go past. This is where the erosion control will be put in alongside the grassy areas on the road shoulders. So there is no expansion towards the wetlands. And as such, with all work within the existing road layout, no expansion of road layout, installation of catch basins to improve capture of road runoff. Then other work is milling and resurfacing of the road surface. Project meets the performance standards for Chapter 172 Regulation 19, freshwater wetlands, and 310 CMR 10.55 bordering vegetative wetlands, which also includes freshwater wetlands under that general category of BVW. All proposed work within the buffer zone to freshwater wetlands. Applicant has proposed erosion and runoff control measures that were shown in the images that Catherine had created for the GIS images. So that should be sufficient to protect the bordering wetlands. And as long as those, Catherine, what do you anticipate, like, the turnover for each one of these catch basins? Is it like within a day or a couple of days?
Each location takes probably 2 days.
2 days.
I would propose to leave the erosion control until we were completely finished with the project.
Sure.
So we've already started in other areas that are outside of your jurisdiction, but I expect we'll be there for another few weeks.
So no other comments. I do view this as something, the type of work that should help to improve the existing conditions as far as capturing road runoff, particularly with the proposed new catch basin near that, what is likely a vernal pool location. I don't know if it's certified or not, but it certainly could function as one. So I recommend a negative determination.
Thank you, Drew. Questions and comments from the commission?
Jumped on top of the chairman. I'm sorry I jumped in on top of the chairman. I just wanted to ask, is this in addition to the work that's been going on for the last 2 to 3 weeks? That stuff was not in our jurisdiction?
Yes, correct.
Other questions?
Brad's question was answered, so no, I don't see any other comments from the commissioners, but if they have any.
Any questions or comments from the public or anyone on the phone?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. If you want to come up, just give your name for the record.
Lynn Barbie, Surf Drive. Obviously, I live right near here. I've been watching them replace those drains, and my question is, we have drains on Surf Drive that look like these, about as good condition, and I'm gathering they must go into the same, they drain into the same thing. Is something going to be replaced on Surf Drive within our Seabrook Village area as well? That's all my question.
Catherine's going to answer that question.
There is no work proposed on Surf Drive as part of this project. This is just on Red Brook Road. And Drew, if I can just clarify as well, we are stopping just past the intersection with Monomoskoye Road, the additional area near the town line where we're working with the town of Falmouth on a culvert project that would be done on a later date.
That's not, that stretch of road is not part of this present.
Correct,
project.
yes.
Stopping just short of it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. No other questions from the audience, Chad, or nobody on the phone calling in?
Thank you, Drew. Hearing that, if there's no more discussion, we'll entertain a motion. This is an RDA.
I'll make a motion for a negative determination for the RDA put forward by the town of Mashpee DPW for the Red Brook Road culvert replacement project.
Not culvert, it's drainage and road.
Drainage improvements.
Getting ahead of ourselves now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Alex. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Charlie. If there's no more discussion, we'll begin voting. Paul,
Yes.
Brad,
Yes.
Alex,
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carries.
Thank you, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Drew, if we could return to the pre- and post-agenda items.
Sure.
Thank you.
We had already had the minutes approved. Childs River Restoration, if, for those who were in attendance today, they had their celebration ceremony today, and I was able to attend part of it. I saw Brad and Paul and Alex there as well as many other people that I recognized. One of our selectmen, Andrew Gottlieb, various individuals from State Fish and Wildlife, Division of Ecological Restoration, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, basically, all the partners that are involved in the Mashpee National Wildlife Refuge, and then, of course, members of the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club, state representatives, and various state officials. So it was a very impressive showing of folks who have been involved in this process, this restoration project, and the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club really did an outstanding job of setting up this ceremony, having all kinds of information, very well organized, and recognizing all of the different contributions from local, state, and federal funding sources and technical assistance. And it really has, especially in the light of, in face of COVID, turned out to be an outstanding restoration project that I'm sure will serve as a model moving forward as far as how partnerships work, taking advantage of partnerships and overcoming obstacles. And it didn't get much harder than trying to do all of this during the time of COVID, where not only people were, not able to work, but the supply chain was interrupted. And then to cap it all off, they had all of this significant amount of rain towards the end of the project, which resulted in a tremendous amount of siltation, which had to be dealt with on the Falmouth side of things, particularly with the last stretch of replacing the road culvert under a carriage shop road. And they overcame all of that, and everything ended up being very smooth. There's still obviously some ongoing work that's taking place, but all the heavy lifting has really been accomplished. And to me, the most impressive part about this was the leadership aspect of the Falmouth Rod and Gun Club, the resources they dedicated towards this, the passion they put into it, and bringing all of this together to make this a successful restoration project.
They don't sign this.
What? Yes. Oh,
43 Little Neck.
yeah, it passed.
Okay.
Oh, but they don't sign it, no.
Yeah, that was my question, yeah. Okay.
Negative votes, don't sign.
Sorry. So, very well run,
I didn't want to.
very well run celebration event, and
Thank you for
great
bringing
job
it to
all
the
around to everyone involved. Red Brook Road culvert, I did give a presentation to the association members. This was on September 11th, just to introduce myself, what our department does, what we oversee, what we're responsible for, and then describing the situation at Red Brook Road and the culvert failure, and just some information about what the events are moving forward. And I hope it was well received. I did get some positive feedback from some of the folks, some of the members of the association. Tried my best to answer questions that were put forth to the best of my ability and knowledge. And with the understanding that there's still some unknowns moving forward as far as, whether or not we're going to be successful in the grant application and what the overall approach is going to be if the grant comes through, whether it's going to be funding, technical assistance, or both, and what that technical assistance, how will that pan out in terms of future plans. So, but I did emphasize that road safety is of paramount importance and is the primary driver for any actions moving forward. If that means keeping the culvert dammed up or releasing flow, whatever is in the best interest of road safety is going to take absolute precedence of any measures moving forward. And then subsequent to that, we'll be looking at the entire system ecologically and coming up with an approach that results in the most ecological enhancements based on professional expertise and input, as well as input from stakeholders, that being the local abutting residents. So they'll all be part of the process moving forward, and that was really the emphasis of my presentation. And like I said, I think it was fairly well received. And I know not everybody's going to be happy with the answers that you provide, but they were very gracious hosts, and I was happy to have the opportunity to speak to them and answer questions that they had. Anyone have any questions on it? I'm still here. There were no rotten vegetables thrown in my face. Upper Quashnet Restoration, still working on completing the first 2 phases, and we should start seeing more information soon as far as a conceptual design for restoration, so stay tuned on that. Bylaw Review Subcommittee, I'm actually starting to see a sliver of some time that I can continue to work on Mitigation Regulation 12, so there is a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel coming where I can dedicate more time to that, but in the meantime, we've just really been focused on keeping up with current permitting activities, but it's not off the radar, and we will continue to follow up on that as time allows. Johns Pond Milfoil, obviously you've all been brought up to date on that, and I thank you for approving those order of conditions, for issuing order conditions for that. And Caitlin, do you want to update on Choptic?
Sure. So we recently requested to extend the contract with Horsley Witten until October 31st in order to obtain the baseline documentation report, including the conceptual design plan and construction cost estimates. We also revised our contract, the contract between the town of Mashpee and the in lieu fee program to extend the date of those deliverables from September 30th to October 31st. We'll also be, as part of our deliverables, we'll be creating a draft long-term mitigation plan. So that'll also be completed by December 1st, roughly. So we extended some of these deadlines, and the conservation restriction is currently being reviewed, which is also part of our deliverables, is being reviewed by the Native Land Conservancy, which will ultimately hold the CR on the property. And then after that, it'll go through review from our town council, and then Department of Fish and Game's town council, and then the Army Corps' town council. So lots of levels of approval. But we recently had our site visit out there, I believe it was about a couple weeks ago, about a week ago, with the in lieu fee program and with Neil Price from Horsley Witten. So we did hash out just some of our overall goals for the project, which again is to recapitulate wetland habitat in the area. So I think that was it.
That covers it. Thank you. One last thing that we wanted, and we just kind of added this to the agenda just because we realized it was a kind of a recent issue that we should get your endorsement for. And if I could ask the chairman permission to take a roll call vote of endorsement for this. This is, we have a few gates for our conservation lands around town that do not have Knox boxes on them. And I don't know if some of you may be aware, there was a recent tragic occurrence on one of our conservation lands. A a resident nearby Johns Pond had gone out in his golf cart riding through Johns Pond Conservation Land, got into an accident, and it resulted in a fatality. The fatality really didn't, I mean, the emergency and response crews got out there as quickly as they possibly could, and it wasn't a result of a lack of response time or anything like that. It happened very quickly. But it did, raise the issue that in the future, in future occurrences of emergency situations on Concom lands, we really want to make sure that every single gate has a Knox box. So what we're asking, and I think we've, what are we looking at? 3, 4, how many gates?
It's about 6 gates.
6 gates. Knox boxes are cost-wise.
They're about 300.
300 apiece. We have plenty of funding in our lands and maintenance account to pay for them, but this is very, very important to get done. So we just want to have the commission take a vote to endorse the use of funding under our lands and maintenance account to purchase as many Knox boxes as we need for the remaining gates for emergency access purposes. So if someone...
This is a very important issue, and we have to make sure that our first responders have access to every corner of their responsibility. So do we need a motion to proceed with the roll call vote?
Yes, please.
All right, assuming I can't make it, we'll entertain that from any other member of the commission.
The motion would be I make a motion for a roll call vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion for a roll call vote to use, excuse me, use our funding to...
Thank you.
Oh, he's not done with the motion yet. Give him a moment.
to purchase the boxes for the gates.
Thank you.
Second.
I just hear a second on there.
Yeah, Brad seconded. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Voting. Paul.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
No, he said Charlie.
Oh, sorry.
All right, Paul, yes. Brad, yes. Alex.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carried. Thank you for bringing that through.
Yeah.
I don't know why you didn't want to give a motion.
This is, thank you. I want to thank Caitlin for making me aware of this. And Caitlin's done a great job working with fire and police to make sure that all the current Knox boxes have current keys to the locks to deal with this very important issue as far as public safety. So thank you, Caitlin, for staying on top of this. Much appreciated. And I think that covers everything for this evening. And if there's no other discussion, no other items. So.
Thank you, Drew. If there's no other discussion, commissioners, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would move.
Make that motion.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Brad seconded.
Very much. Voting. Paul.
Yes.
Brad.
Yes.
Alex.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote aye as well. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Drew and Caitlin.